I don't see Ms. Westfall here. From the 328 meeting, it's very disturbing to me, and I think it needs a public apology and a public acknowledgement that on this board was heard by one supervisor, cut the microphone. I heard it. I don't know if the tape picked it up, but I heard it very clearly. And a response by you responding to cut the microphone and calling free speech hate speech. Having one's right to speak is probably the most important issue of our day, of our time, in memoriam forever. If you take that away because the object of your scorn is acceptable, then you no longer have free speech. Whoever that speaker may be, and Ms. Suter, I don't label you as anyone who is just other than another citizen who has a right to speak. And having that microphone cut, and I meant not once but twice during the second effort, is unconscionable. And I think it deserves an acknowledgement of an error, that will never happen again on this Board of Supervisors, that anyone who is deemed to have issues that that don't come anywhere near hate speech. There was no profanity, there was no vulgarity, there were no threats of life. That is what I consider hate speech. Saying to someone, we're going to start a recall against you, is not hate speech. That's free speech. And you need to protect it, you need to covet it. And if you utter any words, if any member of this board here utters words, cut the microphone, that to me is unconscionable. And it should be recognized and never, ever repeated. And I'd like some recognition by both Supervisor Hemmingson and you, Supervisor Chair Howard, that won't happen again.
Thank you, Supervisor Gatlin. I have spent time with County Council on this matter and researched this in great detail. There is a fine line there, as you've stated some of those points, but that line, fortunately for us, has been deliberated by the Supreme Court of the state, and maybe for the edification of the supervisors, all of us, since maybe more than one of us will be in the chair position in the future, I'll have County Council elaborate a little on what essentially qualifies as a personal attack, which in this case, some of those comments made were actually personal and not really directed at the board at the time. So I'd like for some of that clarification for future reference to be made, in particular to the comments that were just made by Supervisor Gitlin. County Council, could you please address some of those?
So the area of free speech, First Amendment rights, is a highly litigated area. So it's not completely as clear as you can say anything you want at any time you want. If there can be time, place, and manner restrictions on free speech, which is why, for example, we have a 3-minute comment period that was litigated by the Ninth Circuit and decided to be within the realm of what's allowable within a public meeting. So we have both the Brown Act and we have the First Amendment free speech right at work here when somebody does a public comment. And so we do have an admin policy that talks about personal attacks or personal insults, and that states that the chairman shall not allow personal attacks or personal insults, and it states that in the admin policy. Do I think that would hold up against a First Amendment challenge? I don't. And so it's a balancing test between the time, place, and manner restrictions and the person's free speech. Where it's a close call, I think it was a bad call on my part, and I apologize to Ms. Sutter for that in that case. But that doesn't give the public the right to do personal attacks. The cutting of the mic is different than telling somebody they have to sit down and stop talking. So if somebody is crossing that line, profanity, racial slurs, religious slurs, some sort of hate speech, cutting the mic would be an acceptable thing to do while still assuring the person that they can continue to speak and they're not being stopped from speaking. So that is kind of actual disruption of the meeting versus the free speech. And I think the best place to err is if it's a close call to allow the speaker to continue, but where it's an actual meeting disruption, not to allow that to continue. That's the reason why there's, the 3-minute restriction. That's the reason why, certain things like threats or fighting words, that's why we all don't talk at the same time, even though we all have free speech. We still have people speak one at a time. So there are some restrictions on free speech, but I do think that was a bad call on my part when the board asked me. So I will take that as my responsibility.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you. I want to express how appalled I am at the horrible treatment of one of my constituents, Linda Sutter, at the last board meeting. Her right to speak her mind at this meeting is protected by the Constitution of the United States. It's a document that all of us, elected officials, have sworn an oath to uphold. She has her rights to 3 minutes, and no board member should ever instruct the staff to turn off her microphone. It certainly wasn't hate speech. She deserves an apology from this board at this meeting for its unconstitutional methods.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other comments? Supervisor Cowan.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because my understanding was what it says right here is the members of the public may address the board on matters which are within our jurisdiction. So it was my understanding in her language and what she was doing, we were saying, wait, this isn't our jurisdiction. We can't make a decision on this. And that's, am I wrong in that, Elizabeth? I mean, that was my understanding why it was stopped.
Yeah, I think that is correct. The board can't do anything on matters that are not within its jurisdiction, and therefore the board would say, give a warning and say that's not within our jurisdiction.
It wasn't content-based.
But if a person continues to stand up there, will it withstand a lawsuit for a free speech violation? And I think it probably would not.
Okay, so maybe we shouldn't have this written the way it is, because I think that's what we were trying to follow. I don't think these gentlemen were doing anything grievous. I think they were trying to follow the direction laid before us, and now all this has come from that. So I just am trying to get a better understanding.
I think that it should be on there, and it should probably also be posted on the podium or somewhere at the back of the room so people know that. And hopefully, if the public is accorded that respect, the public would be also respectful enough not to speak on items that aren't within the jurisdiction, or advertisements or personal, because the board, there are many different possibilities that could come forward.
Supervisor Henderson.
Yeah, and I have been duly warned that that was not the proper procedure. My issue was, as Supervisor Cowan pointed out, that it was not within our jurisdiction, and I don't think that this is a venue for people to get up and promote their own personal agenda. That was the issues that I've had. I have been told that I need to listen to it regardless, and I will in the future. I apologize for anything that I may have done inappropriately.
And as will I, and that's why I spent several hours now on this particular issue with Council and CEO, really to try to figure out what's going on, what's right and wrong. Because, as Council has said, there's a fine line when it's a matter that pertains to the board and then a personal attack. And there were several items that came from that fine line that I think were reacted to by this board. And we do have the right to cut the mic, as you've just heard from Council. We also have the right to warn you. But what we don't have the right to do is limit your free speech for that 3 minutes. And If that caused you grief, we do apologize as a board for doing that. You will have your 3 minutes to speak. But I would caution you in the future that if those personal attacks do come up, there will be warnings of that nature. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and continue on.